Thank you very much, Ambassador Quinn, for those very warm remarks. It is true that I spent some time here in the Midwest, and in fact I think the memories stayed with me so forcefully that I had left my coat at home. So I bought a new one in Manhattan, only to discover that you're having a beautiful Indian summer. But I recall as a student coming from Africa to the Midwest and going through my first winter in Minnesota. I accepted that to keep warm, one had to put on layers and layers of clothing. Even though as a tropical child, I found it cumbersome. But there was one item that I saw never to use, because I thought they were not elegant. These were the earmuffs. On one Sunday afternoon, I went out to get something to eat. It was so cold that I thought I was going to lose my ears. So the next day I went out and bought the biggest pair I could find, elegant or not, and learned a lifelong lesson that you don't walk into a situation and behave as if you know better than the natives. Let me start with the World Food Prize laureates, David Beckham and Joe Luck. Ambassador Quinn and dear friends, I want to thank you for being here in your numbers and for the very warm welcome you have given me. I am deeply honored to be here to pay tribute to our 2010 World Food Prize laureates on the eve of World Food Day, and to examine where we are in the global fight to reduce hunger. Once again, I want to congratulate David Beckham and Joe Luck on winning this most prestigious and meaningful awards. Your work and commitment reminds us all that life's greatest calling is to serve others, and particularly to help them enjoy their basic human rights. This includes, of course, the right not to go hungry. And that is why it is so distressing that 1 billion of our fellow human beings will today go without sufficient food. The scale of the challenge was underlined last month when world leaders met to review the progress in the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals. They heard that while the proportion of people suffering from hunger is declining, the pace of progress remains unsatisfactory. Without coordinated and urgent action, the most basic goal of reducing poverty and world hunger is not likely to be met by 2015 in many countries. Closing this gap is not just a moral imperative, it also lies at the core of a more secure and equitable world. That is why we should be relieved to see an unprecedented global effort with a common purpose and ambition. The aim is not only to feed the hungry today, but to eliminate hunger by creating sustainable, secure, and global food system. Achieving this ambition requires fundamental reform of economic and social policies across the planet. With the world's population continuing to grow, food and nutrition security is a challenge for every country. There remains too many countries where people go hungry, and many more where the threat of food shortages is all too real. But there is one continent where the challenge is particularly urgent and serious: Africa is the only continent which does not grow enough food to feed itself. It alone has failed in recent decades to see agricultural productivity keep pace with the growing population. Unfortunately, as we heard from Ambassador Quinn, Africa was bypassed by the science-based agricultural development built on the ideas of Norman Borlaug. So, we have to, with these ideas, as we know, dramatically transformed agricultural production in Asia. Africa is also the continent most threatened by the impact of climate change. Increasing temperatures and changes in rainfall patterns are increasing water stress and risk making many millions of acres of land much less productive in the future. Indeed, such changes are already taking place. And it is so that the challenge of Africa, of agriculture in Africa, is what I want to focus on today. It is a challenge which can only be overcome by working in partnership with the continent's smallholder farmers. For in Africa and across much of the developing world, the agricultural system is powered by smallholder farmers, more than 3/4 of whom are women. The vast majority of these farmers, as I said, who are women, often have to cope on their own with very little support. But while agriculture contributes 1/3 of the continent's GDP and provides most of its food, it has received far too little support, I would say minimal support. African governments in the final decades of the last century pulled back from desperately needed investments in agriculture at a time when the private sector and market forces were unable or unwilling to fill the void. Public expenditure in agriculture and agricultural research and development for training farmers and supporting them was slashed. The impact of these policies by national governments was made far worse by a dramatic downturn in overseas development assistance for agriculture by our rich partners. The result was that the smallholder farmers struggled to access both the knowledge and resources needed to improve their crops and farms. They were forced to rely on poor seeds planted in depleted soils, poor management of land, water resources, along with weak national and regional economic infrastructure links, also held back agricultural development. And African farmers also found themselves severely disadvantaged by an unbalanced global trade regime, which sets up barriers to potential export markets, prevents the development of food industries while allowing surpluses to be dumped on the continent. The result of all these factors was falling agricultural productivity, farmers trapped in poverty, growing shortages of food, and millions more going hungry. It was to address all these problems and to understand why the lessons learned from Asia's successful agricultural transformation had not touched Africa that, as UN Secretary General, I commissioned a study from the Inter-Academy Council. And I think several people who served on that council are here with us today. And let me say thank you, even if it appears belated. You can clap. The conclusions and recommendations of that study have led to the concept of uniquely African green revolution. Modern and sustainable agriculture with an emphasis on improved seeds, integrated soil fertility, and water management practices. And by basing the revolution firmly on smallholders It builds on Norman Borlaug's pioneering principle that food and nutrition security was best achieved by integrating agricultural research into appropriate technologies for the farmers. It was to play my part in helping bring this transformation about that I was delighted to accept, on leaving the UN, an invitation to chair a new organization, the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa. We are in our early days yet, but I'm very proud of the work that AGRA is doing. With our partners at the national level, as well as international, we are beginning to turn these ambitions into reality on the ground. Our aim is to help build the systems needed to strengthen the critical links in the entire value chain to make smallholder farming and smallholder farming productive, sustainable, and profitable. We are doing this by identifying, supporting, and extending proven local solutions for the benefits of not just hundreds of farmers, but thousands and eventually, we hope, millions. In particular, AGRA is starting to work with countries, donors, NGOs, and farmers' organizations to develop and implement strategies in those areas with the greatest potential to become Africa's breadbaskets, or what you call farm belts in the US. By concentrating resources and efforts in regions which can grow a large share of the continent's staple food requirements, we hope to make the breakthrough needed to deliver food and nutrition security within Africa and eventually create surplus for global export. What is also important is that African governments have themselves recognized the economic and social benefits of investing in their farmers and the rural economy. 7 years ago, they adopted the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program. This called on all African governments to put a minimum of 10% of their budgets, national budgets, into agriculture with the aim of achieving 6% growth per year. This African impetus, along with the commitment of the Millennium Development Goals, spurred in turn a new drive by developed countries to support Africa's agricultural growth. Indeed, never before has there been such a collective drive for change. This encompasses civil society organizations, philanthropic foundations, and multinational corporations. I think you are all aware of the role foundations like Bill and Melinda Gates and Rockefeller are playing in this revolution. And it includes the US administration's Feed the Future initiative and the G8 countries pledge at L'Aquila. From the actions of governments, the Rome-based agencies, and CGIAR, to first and foremost the people of Africa, food and nutrition security now sits firmly and rightly at the top of the development agenda. And this is unprecedented. It's an unprecedented coalition and is having an impact. I saw some of this progress for myself when I recently visited farmers in Mali, and I'm happy to see that the Malian Minister of Agriculture is here with us. And heard from them, heard from the farmers, the difference that access to high-yielding seeds and fertilizers are making to their livelihoods. The transformation is remarkable, and the potential is even more exciting. Farmers are growing new varieties of sorghum, maize, rice that are drought-tolerant and disease-resistant. They are using seeds developed through conventional breeding techniques that can be shaped and developed by African scientists and institutions. National agriculture